Hey everyone, Incoherent here. Today we're going to be starting our newest campaign, which is going to be Germania, according to this poll, so let's get right into that. Now, today we're not going to actually be playing as Germania. This is episode 0. What we're going to be doing is thinking about Germania and planning out how we would ideally play as Germania. I don't want to bog down episode 1 with a lot of theory crafting. What I'd much rather do is do all of my planning ahead of time and then dive right into it at the beginning of episode 1. What I want to do is look at Germania's units, the units of my most immediate enemies, and then get on the campaign map and start planning out how we're going to attack those enemies. Now, the big thing that immediately stands out when anyone looks at Germania is Berserkers are kind of ridiculous. 16 morale, 19 melee attack, 7 defense isn't great, but it's not the worst in the game. You got Naked Fanatics, which are really just numerous and plentiful but worse Berserkers. We have Screeching Women, which look like their whole job is to be near the battlefield to help cause chain routes, which is kind of funny. Oh, I forgot to mention, somehow, Berserkers have 2 hit points, which is incredibly important. Along with very good stamina, fast moving, just all sorts of good shit. We have the Spear Warband, which gets us at an enormous advantage versus other barbarians, because this thing can form a phalanx for some inexplicable reason. Our chosen archers aren't the best in the game. Let's quickly compare them to the best in the game, which would be the Pharaoh's Bowman. So we can see the Pharaoh's Bowman would have missile attack 10, ammo 4800. These have missile attack 8, so they're about 80% of a Pharaoh's Bowman. The rest of their stats really don't matter nearly as much. I too can create attack dogs, not that I care at all about this. And we've got Barbarian Cavalry. Let's see how these compare to the Equites. They're 4, 8, and 10 compared to an Equites, which would be 4, 6, and 12. So, more offensive notably, but slightly worse defensives. That all checks out. A charge of 5 on the Equites versus a charge of 7 on the Barbarian Cavalry. And of course, if we can actually create Gothic Cavalry, that is substantially better. It is proper heavy cavalry. So the big things are just like immediately opening up Axemen and Spear Warband and comparing that to Gaul's Warband and Britannia's Warband and the Hastati of Rome. Now, the Hastati of Rome are a lot worse than I remember them being, so we're going to start with them. We're looking at 6 morale, 14 defense, and 7 attack, which compared to our Spear Warband is 2 more morale, 3 more defense, and 2 less attack. So honestly, these units are all pretty comparable. Sure, the Hastati have notably better defense than my units, but I have notably better attack, and it seems like it's pretty close. Morale of 4 sucks on the Spearmen, but they are a phalanx, so theoretically it should never come under that much threat. And Hastati only have a morale of 6. I thought they would be higher for some reason. So, when you compare all of our infantries, let's see how the actual warbands stack up. 4, 10, 7 for Gaul. Exact same stats for Britain. And you can see that the Spear Warband is just objectively better, with 1 more defense and the ability to form a phalanx before they drop down to their 7 attack normal mode. Meanwhile, the Axemen have a little bit worse defense, but much better morale and much better melee attack at the cost of lower unit counts. The big things we'll need to worry about are the Forester Warband from Gaul being one of the best missile units in the game. It's actually better than a Pharaoh's Bowman. And then from Britannia, we have to worry about their light chariots, because chariots in Rome in general have always been a massive hassle to deal with. But army-wise, we just have, of the barbarian units, or factions rather, very, very high-quality units by comparison. So, before I get into the campaign map, I'm going to talk about changing settings for a little bit. I'm turning off merchants. As far as I can tell in my first game, merchants just cause the AI to waste their money and time building them, so I don't want to give them the option, because merchants have been terrible in my game. Now, something I have noticed is that none of the barbarian factions seem to be doing particularly great for themselves, although it is admittedly the start of the game. People in the forums have pointed out something really important about the population cost rebalancing, though, which is that, yeah, it's a cool mechanic for me, but the effect on the game map is that smaller factions, for instance Numidia, end up nuking their own settlements and having absolutely unusable economies and cities as a consequence of this. So even though I like it, I will be turning population cost balancing back to the remastered setting. And on that note, I'm going to quickly go to graphics, and because I've been having such an awful time with huge unit scale in cities, I'm going to turn it down to high. So now that I've talked about settings for a little bit, I want to talk about how I ranked Germania on my tentative tier list that I posted before I started doing all these series. I listed Germania as a B-tier faction. B-tier factions being ones that have to overcome a substantial problem, and then they're set to win. The problem for Germania being getting to and then conquering Rome. But having thought about Germania more at this point, we may as well get into the campaign as I say all this. Okay, so like I was saying a second ago, I do think, now that I've thought about Germania more, they're not a B-tier faction. I think they're probably an A-tier faction, because conquering Rome is probably not going to be that big of a deal. And since we're in the planning phase, I am going to toggle Fog of War to better demonstrate what I'm talking about. So, based on the unit quality that Germany has compared to other barbarians, they should have the strongest army by far, and unit quality matters a lot more for these barbarian factions, because they cap out at city size 3, which means they actually get to what is their relative endgame. So not only is Germany's unit quality better than I thought it was, they're also not as far away from Rome for conquering it as I thought they would be. I would argue they're as well positioned or better than Dacia is. And the big thing is that I honestly think Germany is strong enough that conquering Rome isn't really that big of a deal. It should be relatively easy, and I think that Germania, if any barbarian faction is A tier, will definitely be A tier. I think this is basically the litmus test for the viability of barbarians. So before I look at specifically the armies I have, I want to just quickly go over my borders. We have one city with Britannia bordered here, we have a border with Gaul here, and while we don't border Gaul down here yet, we almost certainly will eventually. We mostly border rebel settlements. And while these settlements are pretty far away and probably not worth conquering, Vicisgathi, Bordesholm, and Uvavum are all incredibly worth conquering. Oh, and of course Lovesick, whatever the city is. Let's try to avoid talking about that name as much as we can. So, there are 4 rebel settlements that you immediately want to conquer, pretty much no matter what you're doing as Germany. And then the question becomes, you're going to fight Rome. Do you want to bulldoze through Gaul to do it, or do you want to conquer these rebel settlements along the coast and then sail over? And I think conquering these rebel settlements is almost certainly just wrong. It puts me more exposed to Dacia, more exposed to Macedon, means I have to slow down and build boats. It means I'm not conquering the cities of Batavium and Mediolanum, which are quite good, and Gaul does want to dow me, so does Britannia. So the downside of going to war with Gaul is that I probably need to go conquer Alesia relatively early. I don't think that's a problem though, it just means I'm going to be on the offensive in this war that inevitably happens no matter what instead of the defensive. So looking at my units, does Toggle Fog of War let me see enemy armies, or does it just show me that they're there? It just shows me that they're there. Am I within range of these settlements in one turn? No. So ideally what I would hope to be able to do is just send these generals basically alone to go conquer settlements. Because these places don't even have walls. I doubt they're really able to defend themselves. This one might require me some cavalry with it, but there is cavalry to be sent. So these 2 cities have much more meaningful defense. And even though I don't want to move over this close to Dacia, I can just drop a fort here and continue on my merry way. The city doesn't even have walls, so it seems like the right thing to do. So let's look around at what my positions on my agents are. I think the best thing for this diplomat to do is to immediately walk over to Britannia and try to convince them not to dow me. As for this spy, he's either going to Rome and Gaul or this direction, and it's definitely Rome and Gaul. What am I even talking about? And as I look around at my armies, I actually notice a very consistent problem. That problem being that the bulk of my army is actually up here in the far north where it has no purpose. And again, equally unfortunately, one of my tier 3 cities is my furthest north, furthest away from every enemy I listed on that custom battle. This is the worst city I could have, well, second worst I guess, to be large. So in terms of the unit infrastructure I have going on, I'm either recruiting Spear Warband or nothing in all of my cities, which doesn't feel great. Let's also check to see if any cities are very close to growth at the start. And it looks like the answer is a resounding no to that. So this man's able to hire Barbarian Light Cavalry, which is very clearly going to be enough to conquer Bordesholm on its own. He might not even need that. Unfortunately, this unit can only recruit Barbarian Mercenaries, which won't be that much of a help. He probably will still do it though, it'll just be necessary. Seeing as it takes 2 turns to get there though, there's absolutely no reason I wouldn't send this Spear Warband with him. And that looks like a doable siege, this looks like a doable siege. The problem is that this is now very slow. So what I would actually want to do is send this man up the north way, and this would be getting sent down to Lovesick, however you pronounce that. I'm not going to keep trying. I'm going to start calling it L City, or L Town, rather. L Town sounds much nicer. So yeah, this faction leader should be going down, which puts him closer to my wars anyway, and also results in me getting this city captured in a timely manner. So the other thing I would need to do is I would need to assemble my units just to start moving everything south to Mediolanum. And looking at it as I say this, I wouldn't want to do that. What I would actually want to do is start reinforcing Trier and getting ready to make a new army here to send west to Alesia. And just have this initial entire army head south to Mediolanum. And I'll definitely be picking up mercenaries along the way because I simply don't have enough. I don't have enough units in this army to conquer all of Gaul. So likely what I'm going to be doing is maybe building 1 or 2 infrastructure buildings in terms of making better units in my 2 large towns that I have. But aside from these 2 towns building infrastructure for unit production, I think everyone else is going to have to spend their turns cranking taxes and building peasants just for garrisons. Because if I were to actually build infrastructure, I'd probably end up not having the money. If we just go through all of our towns and build a small farm, and then hit end turn, I'm pretty sure what you're going to see is that I'm going to run out of money next turn and not be able to afford mercenaries. Let's toggle Fog of War again, because we're pretty much done with the planning phase. I don't want that ever to be on again. So, yeah, I got 1,300 gold. I literally cannot afford to buy the mercenaries that I need to declare my wars, which is unfortunate. Actually, you're not supposed to be here, so let's send the other commander instead. And quickly test, in Rome Total War Remastered, am I still able to do this? Can I just send a commander to go fight a garrison of peasants and consistently win that? Really? Victory seems certain, only a fool could lose this battle. So I know that I was playing that very poorly and basically just charging in without any real effort, but the reason for that is that the second unit would have been in the center square anyway, and I'd always have to fight it there. So even though I might be able to use some sort of tactics, run that unit around, get it tired, I won't be able to do it the second time around. And we're going to demonstrate how this looks with 2 mercs. I don't think I need the full 3. No, they're actually coming out to see me. That's baffling. That should not be happening. Also, I'm taking a massive amount of losses for like what that was. And my units don't seem super interested in running them down, which is not good. Like, this should easily be run down before it gets to the city square, right? Please just stab him. Alright, he gets the lift. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not salty. This is a test game anyway. Okay, so the thing I want to test is whether or not it's even possible to lure this man out of the square. Alright, if he's not going to charge with this, then what I want to do is pull back, move my general to this side, and I just want him to ever so slightly step on the square so he can back off immediately. Yes, that does get them to move a little bit. Don't attack, please. I'm just trying to bait. It looks almost impossible to bait them fully off the square. Let's see if I can maybe join the battle with this unit and then peel back to get them off the square. This is a thing where I just need to like test bullshit involving AI pathfinding for a long time. Because what I'm doing here isn't really like me trying to learn how to play this battle specifically. I'm trying to learn in general how I can manipulate AI to not fight them in the town square. Because I have lost so many men carelessly in my Germania campaign to pretty much just charging into this from all sides. And then, like, bad pathfinding, units not connecting, and infinite morale makes this fight go on forever and really, really sucks. So I put it at triple speed for a little while to get everyone back to full stamina. No point testing this and just having them be tired. What I want to do is charge in. And once the battle, like, actually starts being joined, once we're really clearly fighting it out, I want to try to pull them back and see if I get chased. They just rout? Are you kidding? So, what is the unit cost of these barbarian peasants? Or the morale, rather? 4. So, 4 morale is absolutely terrible, is what I just learned. Okay, that got them to stay. So, I've established now that the only way to do this... Please don't. The only way to do this is to, just fucking slog it out. Which is not what I wanted to say. There's probably a way to play this out where you don't have to slog it out for the square, but I'm not seeing it. It feels like if I had played this a little bit better earlier and didn't have this many losses, maybe this would be doable consistently. But in an actual campaign, I'd feel terrible about this attack. It feels like it's got a very high, likelihood of that happening.
The enemy has snatched victory from your warrior.
So when I actually do that in the campaign, it looks like I'll be needing to hire all of the mercenaries. Which makes me think that this is going to require a bigger army than I sent as well. Hit the assault button so I can now see them. They've got 2 warbands and 1 light cav, and that looks like it's just fully not going to happen. These armies are roughly equivalent, but they have town square, infinite morale, and I just don't see this happening either. Alright, so one thing I have settled on from this testing, though, is that whatever gameplay problems it may incur, I'm going to be playing on huge unit scale, because, like, this just feels terrible. Like, the units are so small on high unit scale, it's not high at all. And it looks like immediately they retreat their whole army to the square, which is a nightmare. This, however, does feel like it's much more winnable since I have a phalanx to work with. Yeah, I don't know about sending light cavalry to fight my general with my units nearby and his far away.
The warlord of the enemy army is running like a startled goat. Hunt him. Goats make good eating.
Okay, so that's good for us, but
the enemy general. Now his men show fear. Now they may turn and run. Attack! Attack!
are they just going to keep throwing this at us until the entire unit's wiped out? Seems very questionable. It's so weird, right? Like, why are they doing this? Okay, so I think what you want to do here is have the phalanx on one side and the other units on the other side. Just very basic hammer and anvil, force them into the phalanx. But even as I say that, I don't think it's necessary. I think I can just, like, put the phalanx next to them and let the phalanx do literally all the work. I'm pretty sure a phalanx hard counters a barbarian army. You know, if they put the phalanx down, it'll be real sad if they get charged right now with the phalanx up. It's like, that should have went a little bit better than it did. What is this pathfinding the AI suffering from right now? Well, I mean, I say suffering from, but it's the reason that they're not getting charged in the back, so leaves something to be desired, right? Really solid pathfinding. Oh my god, these 2 guys have just killed so many people, and I literally cannot charge the back of the warband because of it. It's ridiculous. I mean, the phalanx warband is doing just fine, but this shit is absurd. Anyway, yeah, I've established that if I have a spear warband, I can just crush barbarian armies. I mean, what I've actually learned is that the spear warband is the good part of this, and the generals seem to be a little bit terrible. I'm gonna go click on a general's stats in the custom battle screen and see how they compare to the Roman generals I've been using. I suspect they're a fucking lot worse. It's also possible that on huge unit size, cavalry gets better. But at this point, I feel comfortable with my planning. Despite all evidence to the contrary, I do feel like I know what I need to do to conquer these 2 cities. I know what to do with the rest of these troops, send them here to gather at Trier to go conquer Gaul, and send the starting army in Trier down, picking up mercs along the way to do this. Unfortunately, it looks like I don't have any money for infrastructure despite starting with 5 cities, but that's fine. So if I look at a Roman general unit, then I can see they have 2 hit points, 10 morale, 14 defense, 11 attack. As opposed to a German general unit, which has the same 2 hit points, 12 morale, 13 defense, 12 attack. Is that the same? 12, 13, 12? It has 1 less defense, but better morale and better melee attack. Does it have a massive difference in charge, perhaps? If anything, my generals are supposedly better than the House of Julii, which is deeply confusing based on how poorly they've been doing, but admittedly, the thing I've been doing to test them is just throwing them into the town square against units holding spears. So that probably wasn't a good judge of their merit, was it? So to summarize, as Germany, it looks like me making a shitload of spear warband in the early game. I would really like to someday be making berserkers or naked fanatics. If I could be making Gothic cavalry as well, that would be fantastic. But in the early game, it's just going to be spear warband for literal days. My enemies are generally not very good against phalanxists, at least until I get to Rome, where I'll need to be out-positioning them and outplaying them with cavalry, and I don't really have an alternative to that. In terms of my game plan, it's to conquer Gaul, conquer rebels, and eventually conquer Rome. And I think I might have to have a point where I build up to actually fight Roman armies, because without berserkers, or at least barbarian light cavalry, I'm not seeing how I can take on a Roman army with just Spear of Warbands. Although, I'm probably going to end up trying. Anyway, I think Germany is probably an A-tier faction, but it's time to go play the campaign and figure out for real exactly how good this faction is. This has been Rather Incoherent. If you liked the video, then please consider subscribing, it really helps the channel out, and I'll see you around.